to Worcester's radio memories. The WORC-FM radio reunion continues on WORC-FM, Oldies 98.9.
Thanks very much, and good afternoon once again, everybody. It's Dave O'Gara, your official co-host for our Worcester radio reunion, and we're brought to you by a bunch of great people today. They've helped make this whole afternoon possible, including Cafe 85. They supplied all the food, and when you come down to visit today, you can have a little something to munch on. They do great catering. 473-9944 would be the number to call. And by the way, we are located at 250 Commercial Street, and it is the open house party this afternoon, if you will, until about 6 o'clock. And we're going to draw a name at 6 o'clock and give away a pair of tickets to see Fleetwood Mac. So if you come in person, make sure you sign up to win Fleetwood Mac tickets. They're going to be at the Centrum for a couple of dates, and we've got tickets to the May 28th show. And we're also sponsored by the Clam Box, Route 9 in Brookfield, and Dresser Hill, Route 31 in Charlton, the best place to get great seafood and delicious ice cream. Sponsored by Paletti's Fruit and Produce as well. They're on Route 131 in Sturbridge. Paletti's has a commitment to quality, and we thank them for making it possible. Talking with Bill Garcia, the BG Grooveyard, the Route 131 show, nighttime jock in the early 60s in Worcester. And we were talking about some of the commercials. I remember listening to the radio and hearing State Opticians commercials.
Yeah. Big client.
Wait. I always wait, you know. It's 5A Pleasant Street or something. I mean, the commercials obviously were a big part of what you did. Now, were you told how often to play the commercials? How did that work in those days?
They did have a commercial log that you had to follow. But we didn't cluster commercials as they do now. Mm-hmm. In other words, you wouldn't hear 6 or 7 commercials in a row. We'd probably play a couple and then we'd get into music or talking. But yeah, I mean, the State Opticians one that comes to mind. Speedy's Car Hop could be another one.
Very famous place. People talk about that all the time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
In fact, I went when I was coming in, I went down Shrewsbury Street, and where Speedy's was is now Edwards Buick used car lot. But that was a hot place.
Now, a lot of people may not remember, when you left WORC, I don't know exactly the time frame here, but you ended up being at 1440 AM and programming against your old station.
WAAB, exactly. And as a matter of fact, we had Jeff Starr, B.J. Dean on the air at AAB, and of course they walked across the street afterwards and went to WORC.
That's right.
But yeah, we tried to go up against those guys.
The juggernaut, huh? But
yeah.
The funny thing is, I remember I was a big radio fan in those days, and I would listen to maybe RKO AM. They were doing the top 40, and they were highly structured, as you well know. And you, I think, structured your station, maybe not after the Drake format, but you were highly structured. Matter of fact, I've heard stories about you calling the hotline and complaining about things. Is that true? You would call guys? Come on.
Unfortunately, yes. There was a hotline in those days.
But in other words, you had a tight rein on the radio station. They probably did 3-hour tight sets, and you rotated jocks a lot.
Absolutely. The emphasis was playing more music, less talk. If you had something to say, you had to say it within a certain amount of time, and then get off. Yeah. And it was that particular time. That was the beginning of that culture, and that thing is just crept up until today's radio, where there's more music, less talk. But the Drake format was the original one at RKO. Matter of fact, the little sidebar to that is kind of interesting because all the records were pretty short in those days.
Yep.
And the Drake people would not play, and this was a dictum to the record companies, would not play a record that was longer than 3 minutes long. Phil Spector put out a record, and on the labeled it as 2 minutes and 43 seconds. So he got under the 3-minute rule. Actually, the record was 3 minutes and 15 or 20 seconds, and I think it was one of the Ronettes songs or one of the Righteous Brothers songs.
I heard a story along those lines that I think I've actually seen the record. Simon and Garfunkel had a song called Fakin' It at one time. It was a pretty big record. And they put on the label for the time 2 minutes and 74 seconds. So people were trying to get around that rule.
Oh,
You're
yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
Now, the reason I mentioned that you were on 1440 programming against 1310 at the time was the fact that even as good as you were, as structured as you were, as researched as you were, you didn't win the ratings battle, did you?
No, we didn't. Unfortunately not. And we ran a lot of neat promotions, too. We ran Monkeys promotions when the Monkeys were hot and all that kind of stuff. And, of course, Jeff Starr worked at night. He was the star and drew a lot of controversy in those days.
Now, he was basically what Howard Stern is to people today, but he was doing it...
Basically, yeah, because you got to remember, we were still in the time of innocence at that particular point, and certain things did not go on the radio at that point.
But he got under a lot of people's saddles, shall we say.
He certainly did.
He would name names, politicians' names.
Absolutely. He created the controversy. And but unfortunately, it didn't translate into numbers.
Well, it did a little bit when he got to the other side of the dial, though.
So
when he moved down the frequency ladder, if you will. All right. Well, listen, we talked about this a little while ago. I understand we got it all loaded up. Our guest is Bill Garcia, who not only was a disc jockey in the radio, but decided to cut a single or two and cash in on maybe on the popularity of the Beatles a little bit. And actually, I remember this being played on the air. And did it go top 10?
Well, I was very fortunate in that the disc jockeys at that time on ORC were pretty open about stuff. And so, they weren't guarded about their own little territories and stuff. And no, we're not going to play the record because they all played the record, my first two records. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, they went top 10 on the ORC charts. We broke even sales-wise.
Really?
And I have to thank two people who were from Shrewsbury, Dick Campbell and Artie Sullivan, were the people who wrote the three sides, other than the Beatles song, obviously. But we recorded this song in the ORC production studio.
Wow. This is a piece of history for you right now. Let's listen to Bill Garcia singing the Lennon-McCartney tune, I'll Keep You Satisfied, right here at WORC-FM, Oldies 98.9. WORC-FM, a little round of applause for Bill Garcia singing I'll Keep You Satisfied. All right. Now,
that was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Now, who do you remember who was in the band, who was playing the music at the time?
Dick Campbell was the writer and producer of the songs that we did. So he played lead guitar. I want to say that his cousin Artie Sullivan played the drums, but I'm not sure.
Now, they had the label Camsoul Records.
Camsoul Records, yeah. Which was Campbell Sullivan.
It's interesting, in this day and age of the Internet, not too long ago, I have a friend I correspond with in Nebraska who sent me Dick Campbell did songs himself, right?
Dick Campbell went to Chicago.
He worked with some famous people.
Worked with Mercury Records.
Yeah.
And I understand he wrote and produced some pretty well-known people after that.
So, but he worked with Bill Garcia first. I want to mention again that we're live at 250 Commercial Street in downtown Worcester as we bring back to the radio airways in Worcester voices that a lot of you people remember. And even if you don't remember these guys, we're kind of hoping that these stories will translate into something kind of fun, because you don't hear it on the radio anymore this way. If you do come down today, and we really urge you to, we've got food to eat and some soft drinks over there. We also have tickets to Fleetwood Mac to give away. So we know it's getting near the end of the workday. For some people heading into Memorial Day weekend, maybe you can swing by here and make us a part of your weekend and sign up for the tickets. We'll have the drawing right around 6 o'clock this evening. Still to come, we've got the fabulous Dick Smith, who was instrumental in bringing the Beatles on the radio and having a lot to do with how popular some other songs were as well. Dick, we'll talk about more about this a little later on, but The Lion Sleeps Tonight is an internationally known hit now.
Absolutely.
And Dick Smith single-handedly revived that, and I've read that in a number of encyclopedias.
We also did some pretty interesting things, too. I mean, Dick was he was kind of the program director, but definitely the music director, and produced a lot of hit records. Well, the reason why ORC was very, one, being an all-request radio station, you got instant reaction to records when they got played. Secondly, because the playlists were pretty tight in Boston radio, the record guys used to come to Worcester to get these records played, and we were kind of their testing ground.
That's right.
I mean, we flipped over a lot of records that became hits. One was Don't Worry Baby. It was the flip of one of the Beach Boys songs that one day we decided to flip and play, and it became such a big hit record.
And obviously that doesn't happen now because they're on 45s, but that happened quite often back then. They'd have
very often
the Baby and Boss battles, rate the record,
exactly,
and that sort of thing. And even
make it or break it.
When I first got on Worcester Radio, it was about 1969 or so, and we would get calls even late at night from people like Bobby Vinton and others who had records on Worcester Radio and wanted to let you know they had a new song coming out. And they were accustomed to talking to Dick Smith and others at the station that, they just wanted to kind of grease the skids a little bit and say, hey, I got a new song coming out. And the artist called regularly.
We did a lot of interviewing at night, too. I mean, I had a ton of people on my show, from Shelley Fabrez to Luke Christie. We had some of the Beach Boys on, Gary Lewis, Petula Clark, Bobby Vinton, a whole bunch of people used to come on our show at night.
They knew, how big the radio station was, because without radio, frankly, there weren't hit records.
Exactly.
I mean, it was the first link in that chain, and I know that a lot of the local bands that I became familiar with, the Joneses and later on Fate around here, they got their records played on the radio, but it was because of the local guys here in Worcester that made it happen for them.
Yep.
Well, we've got, you mentioned Tony Conigliaro, and I think we're actually going to get that on right now before we go to our next commercial break. Tony Conigliaro, of course, was a tremendous baseball player for the Boston Red Sox who tragically got hurt back in 1967, but by then he had already recorded a couple of songs, and then his last top 40 record here in Worcester was something called Limited Man. Now, you mentioned Tony C. Was a very, very popular guy on and off the field, and he had a record called Limited Man that was very, very popular in Worcester. So we thought, in keeping with the theme of being kind of a Worcester, really subjective to Worcester, instead of being a national #1 hit record, let's play a record that was #1 in Worcester by a Boston Red Sox player by the name of Tony Conigliaro. Let's hear it right now. It's Limited Man on WORC-FM, Oldies 98.9. WORC-FM Oldies 98.9, the great hits of the 60s and 70s, and in Worcester, that was a great hit. Tony Conigliaro, the Boston Red Sox, who cut many sides. That was his most popular song in Worcester. And did Tony ever come and make any appearances?
Yeah, he did. Of course, the unofficial visit was with the Angels when they came into town, but he did. I think he did something in front of City Hall for us one time.
City Hall actually was a pretty big area for WORC broadcast.
It drew a lot of people. We did a lot of live broadcasting out there. We had our truck. Yeah. Today they call it the van, the mobile van. But yeah, we used to do a lot of that. When I was at AAB, we used to do a lot of storefront remotes, where people could come by and either talk or watch us and that kind of stuff.
A little bit later on, I'm probably going to talk a little more about that type of thing. We have one of our guests is Gus Giordano, who currently owns Maxwell Silverman's Tool House. He owned a nightclub called Steeple Bumstead at the time, and we did Toys for Tots marathons from the old Denholmes building, among other locations. He'd be on the air for 24 hours straight for charity. So we're going to talk about those types of things. Did you do much in the way of live broadcast remotes in those days? Did they have to be so close to the studios, or could you actually go somewhere, a distance?
We could go a distance. We relied upon the telephone company with landlines. In those early days, the landlines were somewhat questionable. If you worked for a station that had a little bit more money, you ordered 2 lines, just in case one went down. But we did some faraway remotes too. Do you remember a place called the Comic
Strip?
The Comic Strip.
That's down about where the what's the
Crown Plaza?
The Crown Plaza is located now. Yeah.
We did a lot of live. In fact, we did live broadcasts from there every Friday or Saturday of known bands like Eric Burden and the Animals.
That's right. The Yardbirds came there. Yep. Sam the Sham and the Pharaohs. I remember being there one time. There was all the big acts actually came through this area. I think people would be surprised to realize in this day and age, the top 40 acts now just do not make these kinds of appearances anymore.
No, they want gazillion dollars. That's why.
Yeah.
You know,
you could charge $3 or something like that, or $2 to see those acts.
Right. And those bands back in those days didn't care about T-shirts or CD selling or any of those paraphernalia things you have to buy at concerts now if you want a piece of the star.
We're talking with Bill Garcia, who did the nighttime show for many years, the first half of the 60s in Worcester, and was affectionately known as the Route 131 show. Actually, officially, I guess, known as the 131 show. You used to call it the BG Grooveyard. And I remember you had a phrase called "hang tight and check yourself." Now, was that a made-up phrase? Did you hear Wolfman Jack say that? Where did that?
Absolutely made up.
You made that up.
And believe it or not, at that time, people used to think, "Boy, that's a little risque. Hang tight and check yourself, baby."
Yeah.
You know?
I remember you saying that quite often. It's funny. People kid me now whenever I get into the lunch hour. I just say it's bologna sandwich time. I'm a big fan of bologna, but and you know that by listening to the show. But people remark to me, "Oh, that's your little catchphrase."
Exactly.
Your BG Grooveyard.
It took the place of really formalized theme songs. Because in old-time radio, everybody had a theme song. Even disc jockeys had a theme song. But I opted not to have a theme song at ORC, even though the open house, because that was their theme song, written especially for them, and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's always open house at our house.
Yeah, exactly.
Plenty to drink as much as you want. It'll come from the sink. Speaking of food and drink, Cafe 85 is, see how we seg right into the sponsor, Bill? Cafe 85 is supplying the catering today and doing a fine job of that, and everybody seems to be enjoying the food and drink today. We really do appreciate that. 473-9944 would be the number to reach them. We're at 250 Commercial, and you can come down and try Cafe 85 85's food, because this is an open house party until 6 o'clock where you can meet the folks that we're talking to today. We're also sponsored by the Clam Box, Route 9 in Brookfield, and Dresser Hill, Route 31 in Charlton, the best place to get great seafood and delicious ice cream. And our good friends out of Paletti's Fruit and Produce, Route 131 in Sturbridge. Route 131, I can't get over that. In Sturbridge, Paletti's commitment to quality. I did a live broadcast out there not too long ago, and I was so impressed with the strawberries. I bought a whole flat of them. I didn't even intend to do that.
I tell you, the fruit and the food here are just fabulous.
Everything is going great today, and we appreciate Bill Garcia coming by. We have some remaining moments with Bill, and we do have to pay the bills, as it were, so let's take a little break, and the Worcester Radio reunion will continue in just a couple of moments here at WORC-FM, Oldies 98.9.
WORC, more music.
We'll be back with the WORC-FM radio reunion after this on WORC-FM, Oldies 98.9.
If you want to go from 0 to 60...
Now, back to Worcester's radio memories. The WORC-FM radio reunion continues on WORC-FM, Oldies 98.9.
Music, that's our middle name. WORC, music, 1310.
WORC-FM, Oldies 98.9, the great hits of the 60s and 70s. My name's Dave O'Gara. I've been joined this past hour by Bill Garcia, and we even brought back the old Pam's Jingle package, Bill.
That is a tremendous package. I mean, a lot of people don't know, but that was the WABC Jingle package, too, out of New York at one time.
So it was a big-time package.
Yeah, and we had to play these jingles from discs because tape had just was in its infancy at that time. And so what we would have to do is take the jingles, put them on a tape recorder, and cut a disc of them. And we used to go through 3 or 4 of those discs, I would say, every single month.
No kidding.
But it was great to work for a station who had jingles, because I came from one that didn't.
Well, we're going to try something right now. Speaking of back in the old days in New York, we understand that on the line, and we'll hopefully make this work, Bob Mack, who was the co-host of the afternoon open house party, and somebody that you know very well. Bob, are you on the phone there with us?
Yeah, I'm right here.
How are you, Bob? My name's Dave O'Gara. You don't know me, but I used to listen to you all the time. But you do know Bill Garcia.
How are you,
I
Bob?
do. How you doing, Bill?
I'm doing well. I used to remember Bob Mack doing the open house show when I used to visit every once in a while on afternoons. The laid-back Bob Mack. He would just stretch out backwards in that chair and just boom into that microphone.
Oh, that was back in the good old days.
Those were great days.
Well, what are you doing nowadays, Bob?
I'm doing some public relations work for Walmart stores.
No kidding. And how did you find out about this reunion today?
Well, I'm living down in New York here, in Cold Spring, New York. And my daughter was back in the Worcester area over a week or so ago, and she heard it somehow.
Well, your name has come up in discussion several times, as many of us grew up listening to the open house party, and you, of course, worked with the great Bob Breyer through the years. And did you reminisce just a little bit about working on the afternoon show and what it was like in those days?
Well, we had a lot of fun because it was a very popular show, as all the shows were in that station, being all request programs. And we used to read the names off, and we used to get Bob Breyer kind of fouled up. We'd put in a few phony names or kind of tongue twisters. Laugh at that, you know.
Now, in those days, as I recall, you had full-time telephone operators taking all the requests and
we did. Had a couple of them, yeah.
Yeah, and putting a pile of requests on the table, and you had to read them virtually every time you played songs, right?
Oh, yeah, that's right. There are quite a few of them sometimes.
And or from the floor.
On the floor one time.
Exactly. I remember the open house party ended up with putting requests on the floor.
Yeah,
we had a huge table. What the size of that table had to be, 7 or 8 feet?
Oh, at least that, and probably 3 feet wide.
Yeah.
But the floor cost was about 5 times that.
One of my memories, Bob, would be coming home from school and doing my homework with the radio on, and you guys would do, if I remember correctly anyway, you'd have like the history quiz or the math quiz.
Oh, yeah, we had quite a few of them.
And didn't you have one where you had to count the revolutions of a 45 or something?
I don't recall that one.
Well, that was kind of tough. That's from math majors, I guess. But what do you remember about Bob Breyer, the station owner back then?
Well, Bob was always kind of fun to work with, and he would continually ad-lib, and he used to break us up on some of his commercials the way he sounded, you know. He'd be doing the Gillette shave cream commercial there, and he'd say, well, record hopping tonight, guys and gals. You want to be nice and smooth. Now when those girls come around, rub cheeks and take a nice Gillette shave, just moisten your hand and put a little Gillette cream on it, and we used to break up. At least I did, anyway.
Well,
like the devil.
Don't you think it was pretty amazing that a radio station owner would be the prime afternoon guy, or at least half of the afternoon team?
Yeah, he seemed to like that for some reason, and particularly playing the records and one right after the other, But I guess because he was a big-time announcer in New York for years.
That's right. I guess we couldn't see Rupert Murdoch going on air at one of his radio stations now or something.
No, I don't think so.
Well, Bob, we want to thank you for calling in today, and it really helps to make this afternoon even more special because your name has come up in conversation a couple of times, and if you're in the Worcester area, stop by. We'd love to see you.
I'll tell you one funny thing that happened one morning when we had Alan Jay, a news director, giving the news. Dick Smith was on the morning shift there, and that was the day when the cartridges first came out for put our commercials on the cartridge. Yep. We'd have a couple of machines next to us, and sometimes you push the wrong machine, Alan Jay had a signal to give to Dick Smith. He says, last night at the Worcester City Council meeting, Mayor George Wells had this to say, and we heard, I'm Chiquita Banana, and I've come to say.
Oh, man, those kind of stories are just rife through the WORC history.
Well, that's good. Nice talking to you, fellas.
All right, thanks very much, Bob.
Take care.
You're okay, Bill. See you later. Say hello to Dick for me.
I will.
Yep. All right, that's Bob Mack, the other half of the open house party for many, many years. And we've come to the end of our time there, Bill Garcia, and this time has flown by.
Dave, I don't know how to thank you. This has been such a great hour, and it zipped by very quickly. But I'm very thrilled to be back for this little bit on Worcester Radio. It's been many, many, many years.
Well, let me ask you one final question before you go. Do you realize, because I don't think record artists realize how much they mean to people, but do you realize how much you're ingrained in people's memories? I mean, me as a junior high school kid listening to you on the radio, I never forget it. And does it strike you, or did it strike you at the time?
No, because it was a job I went to that I liked doing because I liked music, and you don't think of it in those terms. You think of it nowadays when you reflect back on it. In fact, there are still occasions where I will meet people who will say to me, Bill Garcia, I used to listen to you. By the way, I have to thank the guy who invented the transistor. Because if it wasn't for the transistor radio, we would not have been such successes. But yeah, I still meet people who still remember those days with fondness. Because that was the heyday of Worcester, too. Worcester was a hopping, growing city, did spectacular things in the city, and I'd like to see those days come back to Worcester because I still live here. Okay, well, we'll have you back then. How's that sound? Sounds good.
All right, that's Bill Garcia has been our guest for this past hour as the Worcester Radio reunion continues, and Bill's got his fans here, have some pictures taken, do some autographs. And by the way, let's mention before we go to a song that you can come down and see all these guys in person at 250 Commercial Street. We're right in downtown Worcester, just a stone's throw from the Centrum and the Worcester Center, and you can come down and visit the show and sign up for tickets to win Fleetwood Mac. So come on down and take part in the whole thing, and we'll be back after a tune or two here at WORC-FM Oldies 98.9.